Hi, everybody. We welcome you to Beyond Intuitive Communication with Jim Conroy. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping details that I want to go over with you. So first off, we ask that you use the Q&A for any of your questions and use the chat for outside conversations and networking. Also, we ask that you keep your mute on at all times. And this is a 30-minute presentation, and about 5 minutes before our 30 minutes is up, I'm going to be interrupting and just kind of giving Jim a cue that we're going to need to wrap it up. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jim Conroy. Jim received his PhD in plant pathology from Purdue University 30 years ago and had been working with trees and crops in the ag chem industry until an epiphany told him about a better way to address plant health. We are honored to have Jim, and maybe Basha Alexander might add a few tidbits here and there and talk about healing plants from the inside out through consciousness. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. And thank you to both Isha and Jeannie for being the moderators for this session. Very much appreciated. And I want to thank the coordinators for this whole conference. I believe this conference is very important for both a new way of being with plants, but also important for the planet and important for humanity. So with that, Basha had a good discussion earlier in a previous session, and she talked about using the 4 C's: connection, communication, collaboration, and co-creation to be in partnership with plants. What I'm going to talk to you about is healing sick trees and plants through consciousness. So, you know, this is going to be a higher level of ideas. And one of the things I love is Albert Einstein's quote: "We can't solve the problems using the same kind of thinking we used when we created those problems." I feel it's very important here. We got to think a different way. We got to think at a higher level. So, There we go. One of the ways we have to start thinking is coming from the plant's point of view. Take the perspective of the tree or the plant. See it through its eyes. You know, all of us, a lot of us think, well, we know what the plants need, and we know what they want, and we've studied plants for years, and we know this and we know that. That's right. But we need to twist that a little bit and ask the plants from their perspective what they need and what they want, because we've made a lot of interpretations based on what we see, but those interpretations may not be 100% correct. The plants have a different way of viewing things. So one thing, for example, in the trees world, one trunk is not a tree. They operate in community. There's a community of like maples, there's like a community of oaks, and then there's another higher level, okay, of various species. So what we've tried to do in here is depict on the left what a disconnected community might look like, and then on the right, what a connected community might look like, where they're all working together as one. You know, I hear a lot of people saying, well, in a community, there's a hierarchy. We know about community, but there's a hierarchy. I don't see that, okay? Yes, the older trees bring wisdom to the community, but you know what? A younger tree brings that youthful energy to the community. So they all bring something to that community. Another thing about trees and plants is how they communicate with each other. Well, one of the ways, or the major way that they really communicate with each other, is they sing to each other. It's actually a low vibration, but that's how they sing to each other. Now, I hear a lot of words, you know, the roots touch, that's how they communicate. There's a mycelial network. Yeah, all those things are possible, but really how the trees and plants is they communicate. Well, what happens then in the trees world? Okay, you know, what comes first, the sick tree or the insects and diseases? A lot of people believe that the insects and diseases cause the tree to be sick. It's actually the other way around. The sick tree comes first. It sings an offbeat song, asking for help from the rest of the community. Guess what hears that offbeat song? The insects and disease. So they know which trees are vulnerable to attack, okay? And they move to those. If a tree is really sick, it actually falls out of community. And one of the things I have to do very often is bring them back into community again. So they're all back connected again. Let's talk about the consciousness of trees. And I'm going to use this saying to talk about the consciousness of trees. They say that an oak tree is brought into creation by two forces at the same time. Obviously, there is the acorn from which it all begins, the seed which holds all the promise and potential, which grows into a tree. Everybody can see that. But only a few can recognize that there is another force operating here as well, the future tree itself. That's the consciousness, okay, which wants so badly to exist that it pulls the acorn into being, drawing the seedling forth with longing out of the void, guiding the evolution from nothingness to maturity. In this respect, say the Zens, it is the oak tree that creates the very acorn from which it was born. Again, what's that future tree? That's the tree's consciousness. That's what's starting this whole thing. Consciousness comes before form, and consciousness is the guiding light for the tree. Okay, it holds the goals for the tree. I want to be big. I want to be strong, whatever the case might be. The ideal, it holds the ideal design or the blueprint. I want to be an apple tree, or I want to be an oak tree, whatever that design is, whichever one it is. It holds the innate potentials. I'm going to put on apples, not acorns. Okay. And I want to be 15 feet tall, not 60 feet tall. Okay. That's what the innate potentials, and they have a purpose. Everything has a purpose. All right. Even the little weeds that cover the ground, they have a purpose. That's what they do. They cover the ground, hold that soil into place. That's their purpose. All right. Plants perceive choices, then make something like decision based on those goals, ideals, and innate potentials. All right. And purpose. And I'll talk more about that in another slide. What else does consciousness do? It leads to all of these things. Fall preparation for winter. In the spring, getting the tree up, starting to get the sap growing in the tree. What is this? You know, all of those functions don't just automatically happen inside of a tree. It's the consciousness that drives that based on the goals, ideals, and innate potentials inside of that tree. It's very tree specific and naturally seasonal specific. So everything they do is in sync with that guiding light of consciousness and those goals. So let me give you just a couple of quick examples. Off on the left is a very small willow. It was when it was transplanted, there was hardly anything to this tree. Okay, a very, very sick tree. And what the tree had was many branches, and they were all blocked up, internally blocked up. They couldn't get good flow inside of the branches. But what the tree said, well, I have to keep using these branches right now till I build up a food supply. Okay, so that's exactly what the tree did. It used those branches to build up its food supply. Then it cut off those branches, started sending up new branches. The tree is saying, look, I can get to my goals to be a nice, big, healthy willow tree, not by using these blocked up branches. I can get there easier by moving to these new branches that have easy flow in them and could grow and be very healthy. The tree in the middle is all about an oak, is a oak tree. And that tree decided it wanted to put on more xylem and phloem. That's the tissue right underneath the bark that carries the fluids up and down the tree. All right. And well, why did it want to do that? So it could support the top. Okay. And then if it can support the top it currently has, then that top can grow more. Okay. That's what the tree wants to do. It's a decision. It wants to grow more. The tree off to the right was all about increasing circulation in the tree, both to clear blockages inside of the tree, any blockages in that vascular tissue tree, that xylem and phloem I talked about, but also to keep any blockages from forming. Okay, and that's what that tree was all about. So that consciousness is the guiding light, okay, for the tree. Okay, the conscious goals are the guiding light for the tree. One comment about doing research with trees, especially if you're starting to think about coming from the plant's point of view. I started out, replicated plot design, okay, where you treat one plot and you don't treat another plot. Well, I come out of the chemical industry, and this is very popular. You treat one plot, don't treat the other plot, and you see what the difference is. Well, the first year, there was no difference. Couldn't find out any difference at all. Well, what was going on? Trees and plants operate in community. Sure, so everybody got the treatment. So what did I do the second year? I treated everybody. And then I asked certain plots, I said, okay, would you please be the untreated? Okay, and they said, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, and then what they did is they didn't implement the treatment. So then we could see the differences between the treated and the untreated. But that it kind of when, if you're coming from the plant's point of view, you have to start thinking there's a new way of doing research methods. Nature genes healing. There's no, I don't think there's any debate about that. Okay, species failure, fires, tree decline, everything going on. Why can't trees and plants heal themselves? Well, the truth is sometimes they can, but more often they can't, because they get confused, they get stuck. Okay, they can't manage their inner resources or sequence systems. All right, take a look to the right here. Just think, this is a very oversimplified example, but okay, tree makes food, photosynthesis in the leaves. It has to circulate that food, get it out to the growing points. The cells divide in the growing points, and that's how the tree grows. Well, if those functions aren't connected within, the photosynthesis, circulation, cell division aren't connected within, and then not interconnected, we don't have a very healthy tree. Very often, when the trees and plants are stuck, consciousness knows what it wants to do, but it either doesn't have the resources, or somehow that path to healing is blocked. So what do? I use my scientific knowledge to ask the plants the right questions. Okay, I don't assume I know anything. It's a permission-based system. I'm a pass-through. I follow a protocol that I've developed. I get insight and take direction from my spirit guides and the intelligence in nature. I find out what parts and systems aren't operating inside of that tree, and I get them back connected again, get them back operating again. All right, that's what I do. I'm not healing that tree. I'm giving the consciousness of that tree the information so it can heal itself. So what's this look like? So we move from the left there, the tree functions on the left, to the tree functions on the right. Okay, you can see how those functions are back connected again and then interconnected. And that's what brings us the healthy tree. Okay, again, it's an oversimplified example, but it gives you a good idea. Conventional practices can't do that. Let me tell you, you can spray the tree with whatever you want. You're not going to get that to happen. You put fertilizer in the tree, you're not going to get that to happen. Okay, it requires a new kind of thinking. It's another way of looking at that whole thing. We move from compensating or compromised inner feedback loops to healthy feedback loops inside of the tree. And this is a final picture of that. Again, you have system repair, such as photosynthesis, making food for the tree. You have the circulation, opening flow circulation, and that enables growth. The cells are getting fed, they're dividing and growing, and you have the synergy of all those to bring back that functionality and growth to the tree. Okay, now, when I'm working with a tree, I don't always have to find everything that's not operating inside of that tree. Usually, if I find 3 or 4 major things inside of the tree, then all of a sudden the tree just takes off and it starts to grow. Okay, it just starts to operate again, and I can actually feel that. All right. So what's my 3-step system? I first do a connection process with all the beings in nature. Okay, bring them all. It's look, the trees operate in community, but it's not only with trees. You got to work with all the beings, including the water and everything. Bring them all together, have them all connected. Then we work on a path to healing for the trees. What's in there? First of all, a source of food, food energy, fluid energy. Get all those parts connected. Then the functionality going again, get the growth going. And most important in that path to healing is to attain a sustainable health and growth. You want that cycle to keep going so that tree or plant can continue to grow. We bring that all into the consciousness of the tree. I merge the consciousness with the blueprint of the tree. Okay. And then we get the nice dimensional to physical to dimensional pattern happening. And I know that's where you're bringing it into physical manifestation from a dimensional space. Now, I know that's a mouthful in there, and a lot of people don't understand the dimensional physical aspects. And I'll have to just save that for another time. So let me tell you about this honey locust. This was in Greenwich, Connecticut. Honey locust tree was planted in well, actually not too late, in about July of 2017. In August of 2017, dropped all of its leaves. Didn't know what happened. Was it transplant shock, or the tree is right by some salt water source. And so there's very high water table there. So maybe the water table got to the roots. Didn't know what was going on. Started to work with the tree. I said, hey, do you want to live? Do you want to make it? Well, yeah, but I'm kind of sitting here because, if I start using up all my resources and I use them wrong, then I'm not going to live very long. I said, okay. So suppose I work with you and we'll determine a path to healing for you. Would you give it a try? Well, maybe. Okay. So we work on a path to healing with the tree. All right. And then I asked the tree, okay, you think you can give it a try? Yeah, I'll give it a try. 3 days later, you can look at the picture in the middle. The tree started to send up shoots. Or the next picture is what that tree looked like about a month later in 2018. And then what that tree looks like today in 2021. Okay, nice healthy tree. But important thing here is that the trees make choices. They see choices, okay, and they make decisions. And it's all based on that consciousness and those goals for the tree. That's the important piece here. Another tree is magnolia. Phytophthora on the trunk of the tree. Okay, you can see, worked on the tree in 2015, Phytophthora cleared by 2016. Again, you can see even in 2020, no Phytophthora on that tree. And here's that tree today. Okay, beautiful tree, nice big, healthy magnolia tree. All right, this is an oak tree. Again, looking very thin there on the left, July of 2016. You can see what that tree looked like in 2019. Again, began to fill in 220 a little bit more. Now, by the way, you might think, well, boy, that seems to take a long time. Yeah, it does. Trees are on tree time. They're not on people time. I had to remind my clients that all the time. They think, oh, just instantly the tree is going to put on leaves and look beautiful again. No, I have to remind them that the tree is on tree time and not on people time. Also, the other thing, you look at the tree to the right there, those are some dead limbs. Dead limbs don't grow leaves. Sorry, I can't do that. That's a miracle worker. I don't do that. But if you trim those dead limbs off, you'll have a nice, healthy looking tree again. I work a lot of fire areas, California especially. We were, the well-known Paradise Fire in California. That happened in October, November of 2018. We were in there on March 2019. One of the first people in there, I got to tell you, right afterwards, because they kept the area closed for quite a while. They wouldn't let anybody in there for a long time right after this happened. And this is what some redwoods look like. We went there 3 times that year, as well as other fire areas in California. We went there 3 times. You can see what the tree looked like in March. By May, you can start to see shoots coming out of the bark. That's that little center picture there. And again, in May, you can see that growth beginning to come back in those trees. What do we do in burnt trees? Well, yes, we give them a path to healing, but what's most importantly, what we do is help them manage their resources. Look, a tree that's burnt only has so many resources. Okay, food, water, stored food and water, things like that. So it's got to manage those resources so it can put on new growth and begin to make new food for itself. Very often, and I've seen this more often than you'll want to know, a tree will begin to grow after a fire, but then it fails. Okay. And one of the things we do is help them manage their resources so that they begin to grow. Okay. And begin to live to be a nice, healthy trees. All right. This is those same trees in 219. Okay. You can see how they're coming back. Okay. Very, very, putting on a lot of new growth. Okay. Again, helping them manage their inner resources, sustain growth, not fail. And these are the trees. We missed being there in 220 because of the virus. We didn't want to travel. And those same trees in 2020. And in fact, the picture on the left, you can see how the redwoods are very common for that. They send up a lot of new shoots from the roots. Okay. And in the right picture, you can see a new building actually put up in there. Okay. That building was not there. That building was totally burned down during the fire. Okay. This is a tree from the Thomas fire near, it's in Ojai, California, but this is near Santa Barbara. Okay, that fire occurred in December of 217. We came in March of 218 and worked on these trees. Now, let me tell you, when I treat a large area, but what we do is we pick out certain trees that we're going to keep track of, because otherwise we can't monitor our results. We even give them a name. We call this one Survivor. You can see the name up top there. That's what we called it. Okay. You can see what the tree looked like in March of 218. By May of 218, you can see the tree was starting to put out new shoots. There's up in the very upper right-hand corner, you can begin to see those new shoots coming out of the bark. Let me tell you, if you ever watch a very burnt tree like you have on the left, and then you see out of the bark just makes a little crack, and out of it comes a new shoot. And it's kind of just, oh my goodness, this tree is going to make it, and it's really a beautiful event. And then this is what that tree looked like in 219. Back again, coming back full. We haven't made it back since then, but that's what that tree looks like. Again, this is our, we have clients all over the United States, but we also do philanthropic work, such as covering those fire areas. This is a map of all the areas where we've been, done some work. Now, there's an urgency to all this. We all know there's problems. Stress trees are globally, there's new diseases, new insects, fires, everything. We all know that. Okay. Now, there's practical actions are only half of what's needed for a livable planet. Okay. Reducing emissions, recycling, stopping pollution. Yes, those things will slow down climate change, but they won't heal already sick trees. You need to heal those already sick trees. Okay. So that's the other half. The other half is to restore livability back to those trees. Move from an unlivable planet to a livable planet. How do we do that? Well, one of the things is people's direct and conscious healing interactions with nature and all the beings of nature. Very important. What do we mean by this? Well, there's an overlap of bioenergy and consciousness. People have a bioenergy, the trees have a bioenergy. You have a consciousness, the plants have a consciousness. There's possible to overlap with those and work with that consciousness and bioenergy of the trees and with our bioenergy and consciousness. All right, so how do we do this? And what can people do? Well, they can connect with the trees, they can communicate with the trees, they can collaborate with the trees, they can co-create with the trees. But you know what? People want something really easy. What can we do? Well, here's something they can do very, very easy. we're putting out a lot of tree whispers for people. They're usually sets of 10 or 15 whispers. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. We also teach classes, okay? And we teach at Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. We teach our own classes, okay? And give people actual hands-on lessons to working with trees. And then we're out with those 4 C's all the time, giving talks to people, connecting with trees. People want to just connect with trees. They love trees. We just want to connect with trees. And they're willing to do the whispers. Not all of them are willing to take the classes, but that's okay. What are the whispers? Well, they're messages from a heart, okay? But here's a couple things. They're spirit inspired, okay? We've worked on these whispers for 18 years, and they're embedded with powerful energy and vitality. But you know what the most important thing is? They empower people. People feel empowered. You know, when there's a problem, people, and especially tree lovers, they want to do something. And this gives them something they can do. And you know what? It works. Let me tell you, it works. Here's an example of a whisper. This is one of 10, but I'll just go through this one very slowly. Connection opens flow and circulation. Distribute and exchange food and food energy and fluid energy where they are needed, as well within and between all ecosystem members. That's an example of whisper. It's one of 10. Again, they're energy packed and they're spirit packed, and they work. How do we know they work? Well, a couple of years ago, Hurricane Sandy was coming up the East Coast. And by the way, the consciousness of the trees told me, yes, the hurricanes, they know it's coming. The consciousness of the trees, they know when it's coming. All right. They are very clear about that. And I talked to them about it, work with the trees. I started work with the trees, but Bosch has sent out these storm prep whispers to people. Well, I got to tell you, we sent it out to our mailing list, and then people started forwarding it to their mailing list, and then other people started forwarding it, and it really went out to a lot of people. Well, let me tell you, when people finally got their electricity back, then they started sending us messages. Hey, these whispers were really great. I really helped my trees out. Okay. I was around my house. I had a few twigs down. So I think, oh, hurricane isn't too bad. I got in my car and tried to go down the street, and there are trees laying down all over the road. Okay. So the whispers do really work.
Interrupting
So
here,
we're all,
Jim, just really quick. You've got about 5 minutes left.
yeah, I'll be done very shortly. Thank you. And the new one, the newest set we're putting out now is for the West Coast, primarily for the West Coast, but it's deal with the drought whispers. And we feel these are very, very important. We're going out to California again, starting Saturday. We're going to be working in various areas, again, helping people deal with the drought. And we give them these deal with the drought whispers.
They're online too.
And they're going to be online too. Yes. And they give some priorities for adding more xylem and phloem. They make easier flow of fluids. Let me tell you what the bring thing they do. They help bring some moisture into that whole system. It may not be enough moisture to help the trees grow, but it'll at least save the trees so that when the rains finally do come back, okay, they can begin to grow again, okay, and they won't fail. Okay, that's what it does. You're bringing moisture into that whole system, into that whole complex of that whole ecosystem. Here's where all the whispers can be found and the different types of whispers. I partner with nature and climatewhispering.org. I always have to show this shot. Good idea. Just show you what good consciousness can do on a piece of land. Okay. This guy has this willow transplanted in 218. You can see what that willow looks like in 221. Has very good, loves his trees, makes a lot of difference. And using that whispers is part of that consciousness. But this guy just loves his trees, and that makes all the difference. Be a good steward, love your plants, love your trees, have them as part of the family. That's what's important here. And this is I can't say how important this is. Be humble, come from the plant's point of view, ask it what its life is like. find out, give it that twist. Use the information we have to find out what the plants need. Ask nature and ask the trees and plants the right questions we can ask from our perspective, but ask them and listen to what they have to say so we get their perspective. And then what we do is that's in the connection and the communication. Then collaborate with the beings of nature and co-create with them. You know, beings of nature, especially trees, they want to work with us. They want to work with humans very bad. But humans have, we can just go do whatever we want to do, you know? And nature says, sometimes she says, no, it ain't going to be that way anymore, and starts fighting back. But anyway, start to come from the plant's point of view. Very, very important. We offer some other resources. We have 7 books and 5 websites. If anybody has any questions or needs any more information, you can always email me, drjim@thetreewhisperer.com. That's where I can be found. And with all of that, I thank you. I thank you for participating and listening today. And with that, I'll take any questions that anybody might have. If you don't get it, you can tell I'm very enthusiastic about this work. Okay, I love it. My purpose in life is to save trees. Okay, that's what I'm here to do. I'm convinced of that. I know that, and I'm here to save these trees. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. That's really, really interesting. We have some questions here from our audience, and I'll just start with this one. What is the essential and pivotal contribution and role humans are and have for the plant world? That's the first part. And then the second part is, what missing part do we as humans play in the healing of trees that the trees are unable to accomplish on their own? So do you want me to say the 2 parts again? What is the first part? What is the essential and pivotal contribution and role humans are and have for the plant world? That's the first part.
First of all, people need to recognize that plants aren't things. Okay, they're not it. Okay, they're living beings, and there's a consciousness there. Just like we have a consciousness, they have a consciousness. Maybe they don't have a brain like we do, but they have a consciousness. Okay, and that consciousness is that guiding light for the tree and the plants, and we need to work with that. Humans can work with that consciousness on a left brain logical side, but a right brain intuitive side. They can work with the consciousness of that plant. All right, and that's what people can do. Go ahead. What's your second part?
Second part was, what missing part do we as humans play in the healing of forests that the trees are unable to accomplish on their own? And I think you may have just answered that.
I think I just answered that. Yeah.
Okay.
Come from the plants. Most of all, start to use the knowledge we know and ask the right questions to the plants. That's the biggest key. I am humbled all the time. I think I know a lot of things. Okay. But you know what? It's kind of like there's so many moments when it's like a duh moment, because duh meaning like, I never thought about that. Okay. Because the plants twist it around and say, yeah, that's right. But this is what it means to us, you know, and it's just completely different than anything I as a human ever thought was possible. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can you do the whispering long distance?
Yes, I do it all the time, especially with the virus we just had. I'm getting requests all the time to do it. And what I tell people, and people can too. Yeah, that's right. They can too. I get a lot. I ask people to send me a picture. That's what I ask people to do, and I can work with them. But people can too. They can. Sure, if they get a picture or something, focus, tune into that picture, and yes, they absolutely can.
Yeah,
okay.
We just put up those deal with the drought whispers on Dr. Jim's site and on my Partner with Nature site as well. And you can do those wherever you are. You can work with your tree in your own backyard and ask it to be an intermediary, and you can absolutely do that long distance.
Okay, I would like to ask you, how do you heal a forest or land after a plantation?
After a plantation,
Like yeah, after a plantation's been, you know, big ag, big ag.
Oh, big ag.
Yeah.
Go in with, use organic products. Okay, move the land completely to organic products. Use, get away from any chemicals on the property.
Ask them.
And start to work with the plants, start to ask the plants there what they need, okay, to move from a chemical, probably what was a chemical chemical where they were using chemicals, back to a natural habitat again. Ask them what they need. Use the whispers we're offering. Okay, some of those things.
Yeah.
That would probably be what I'd mostly write. And you know what the biggest thing, one of the biggest things, bring the good consciousness. I want to bring the good consciousness back into this land. And you have to hold it in their people hold that in their consciousness, what good land, healthy land looks like. And that land will gradually move back into that being that healthy land.
Hmm. Could you repeat the websites where we can get the whispers?
No, Basha.
Sure. Dr. Jim's site is The Tree Whisperer. So you have to make sure that there's that extra ER at the end there. thetreewhisperer.com and partnerwithnature.org.
How about climate whisper?
Oh, well, I forgot to mention, yes, climatewhispering.org. That's really focused more on the climate-oriented whispers. The partnerwithnature.org is focused a little bit more toward healing whispers, but there is some overlap.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
someone has just written them very nicely into the chat.
Yeah. So can we hear more about the permission-based system?
Yeah, I actually love it. It's when I'm in there, when I'm touching into the conscious with the tree, I ask permission to treat. And I'm asking if I'm not given permission, then I don't treat them. It's that very simple. Once in a while, it happens, very rarely, but I will tell you, once in a while, a tree says, look, I'm out of here. Okay, I'm out of here. I don't want to be saved. Okay. And I have to respect that. And I thank the tree. I thank the tree for its life. I thank it for all it's done. I give it some hints. I tell it, take its energy back to the earth, give its energy to the other trees. And I say, thank you. And that's it. And that's what happens. But it's a permission-based system. As simple as asking permission to treat the tree. It's kind of like, you really want a doctor, they ask permission to treat you, I mean, and they do, you got to sign the forms now, but that's basically the idea, you really want to be conscious. They're a conscious form, and you got to be polite and ask permission. Rarely do they say no, though. I have to tell you, rarely do they say no. Okay. And I treat trees even when they're seriously hurt. I mean, I've treated trees when they have no more leaves left on them. Okay. But I can still feel a little life force in the tree. I ask permission to treat the tree. The tree says, yeah, I'd like to try. Again, I can't always bring them back, but I try. Okay. And that's what I do. Okay.
So what insights does the permission-based system generate for thinking of an ethical relationship with plants, one that foregrounds trust and reciprocal living? What kinds of insights from ethics do you think that this idea of this permission-based system?
I guess what I would say from an ethical standpoint,
Mhm.
it's just understanding that what we're saying is collaborating with trees and plants. You want to collaborate with them and not treat them like things. Okay. So by asking their permission is actually collaborating with them. Okay. And asking, can I treat you? So I guess from an ethical standpoint, that's would be my answer.
Yeah.
And that would be probably about it. The other side of it all is, the other thing I'd say is, I told you there was a connection process with the whole ecosystem too. And a tree is part of the whole ecosystem. it may have fallen out of community, and it's part of, sometimes they want to be brought back into community, sometimes they don't, so it's really just asking them, coming from their point of view and asking them what they want and understanding, and that's just being very respectful of trees and plants.
Okay. Well, so what you're talking about really reminds me of my Reiki training. So what branches of knowledge, for example, scientific, indigenous, spiritual, etc., are being invoked in this approach to healing?
Probably many. I'll tell you, probably many. I've developed the system. I followed I'll tell you, initially followed a system for people called the body talk system. And when I started, remember now, I came out of the chemical industry, and I walked a lot of fields, a lot of soybean fields, a lot of corn fields. And I saw that trees and plants, that there was an opportunity here to for another way of healing trees and plants. Okay, especially small plants, when I was walking those corn and soybean fields. So it's just really an opportunity to work with them and to help them heal. But anyway, the body talk system was all about, I listened to a guy give, the gentleman who founded the body talk system, one night. He came to New York, and I actually came home from Texas at the time. I was doing some work, came home, and I went into New York to listen to him. And he said, well, what I do is I get, the heart's connected to the lungs, and the lungs connected to the other parts of the body, and this connected to this, and this connected to that. He gave about a break after 45 minutes into that thing. After this, in his introduction, I said, look, I don't know how your system works for people, but I see a great potential for plants. So he kind of looked at me with a half smile on his face. He says, well, if you can figure it out, go for it. And I did. And so I started to develop that system. And then naturally, plants are altogether different than people, because people, you have a lot of emotions with people, and fear and anger and things like that you have to deal with. You don't have to deal with that with plants. And let me tell you, they're really simple to deal with, and they just want to, hey, I want to live. That's it, and that's what you're working with. So that's that's the system I've followed. From that, what we do, the way we work it is I go out and I look for insights from the trees and the plants. Okay, what they tell me. And then Bosch is really good, because what she does is she reads the books about what other people are doing. And then I'll come home and tell her what I found. And she says, yeah, well, that's something like this one's doing, or that's something like this one's doing, or that's something like this one's doing. But I don't want to have somebody's ideas in my head, in my consciousness when I'm out there. I just want to be tuned into that plant. I want to be tuned into what that tree wants. And that's what I want. Okay. And that's how I do it.
Have you been able to translate this information into the ag chem industry in any type of successful way?
Not really. I haven't done a lot with the ag chem people. I mostly work with, I did a lot initially. I'll tell you where I find well, I shouldn't say I don't. I do, because I work with organic farmers. Okay. That's one place I found they are really open to this. Okay. For the most part. Okay. They're kind of set in their ways too, pretty often, but they're somewhat open to it, because they're open to a new ways of thinking. Okay. But we really haven't cracked into the chemical industry, because the chemicals are, so focused on, you just got to use this chemical to control this, and you got to use this chemical to control this, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. It's really hard to bust into them. And part of that comes from the domination, control, and superiority paradigm that people have about plants. That plant is it's not a living being. Okay. And that's one of the things we talk about with people is, look, start to come from the plant's point of view. That's a living consciousness there. Start to work with that. Start to come from its point of view. Work with it. Be in partnership with that. So that's what we do. I haven't, the chemical industry isn't quite 100% open to that yet.
Not ready yet.
Not ready yet.
To come. That's the next chapter in your work.
The next chapter.
We certainly
And
hope.
if you can change that paradigm, then
Well,
I'm impressed.
let me tell you what I get. Let me tell you what I do get. I'm very fortunate. Okay. I'm very fortunate because I came out of an ag chem background. I was a marketing manager for a large chemical, a very large chemical. Okay. That was used on soybeans. And I developed that chemical from scratch. Okay. And developed it. It got 50 some odd percent of the soybean herbicide market. So I know a lot about chemicals. I know a lot about herbicides. I know a lot about insecticides. I know a lot about fungicides. I know about that. So one thing that helps me is I don't anymore because I just don't have the time. But I used to do a lot of conventional shows with chemical people. Okay. And they come up to me and they say, well, I get two sides that come up to me. Okay. And one side says, well, you don't know what you're talking about here because my chemical, this chemical does this, this, and that. And I look at them square in the eyeball and I say, let me tell you, I know more about your chemical than you do. Okay. And I kind of rattle off a few things and they kind of shut up pretty quick. Okay. And so that's the first thing that happens. The other thing that happens is they'll come by the table in groups and be like 3 or 4 in the groups. They and that's nothing. Well, one of them will come circling around a little bit later. Well, don't tell my buddies, but when I'm in the top of the tree, I'm feeling something. Yeah, you better believe it. You're feeling something. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you got it. So you get a lot of that. And then on the dark side, I got to tell you, there's the guys who want to fight you tooth and nail. Okay, they want to fight you. This is no good. This bunch of crap. Okay, I don't pay any attention to them, but I'll pay attention. I'll work with the people that have given me at least a half listening to, and the people who are really tuned in, and that's what I really work with.
Jim, thank you so much. I think we're gonna have to wrap it up now.
Yeah.
On this conversation, but we really, really appreciate your time and your information that you've shared with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you, Isha. Thank you both for moderating this session. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Isha.
Thank you. Bye.